What happens when a Hollywood icon known for calm charm steps onto a stage famous for chaos? And the one person he never expected to challenge him does exactly that. What happens when Captain America himself is pushed to the edge, live on national television, and decides he's not going to swallow it anymore? Let's go inside the moment everything changed. The studio lights of The View glowed hotter than usual that morning, casting long streaks across the polished table as the audience buzzed with excitement. Chris Evans walked onto the stage with his usual easy confidence, warm smile, relaxed posture, a soft wave to the cheering crowd. He was here to promote a film, but everyone could feel something charged in the air even before he sat down. The energy wasn't the typical electric thrill of a celebrity interview. It was sharper, tighter, as if the room was holding its breath for something it couldn't name. Whoopi Goldberg watched him closely, arms folded subtly, her expression somewhere between amusement and scrutiny. She'd joked the day before about wanting to ask Chris some real questions, and the producers had loved it, pushing her to go for something bold. But nobody knew she would press harder than even she expected. Chris settled into his seat, leaning into the mic with that gentle voice the public adored. "Thanks for having me back," he said. The audience cheered again, so loud the stage floor vibrated, but there was something in Whoopi's half-smile that didn't match the moment. She waited until the noise died down, then tilted her head, studying him with a look that felt almost surgical. "So Chris," she began, her tone deceptively casual, "you always come across as this perfect guy. Unproblematic. Charming. America's sweetheart, or America's favorite superhero." She paused for effect. "But not everyone buys that, you know." The audience murmured, more confused than intrigued. Chris blinked slowly, not defensive but genuinely surprised. "Well," he chuckled lightly, "I try to be a decent person. That's really all." "Sure," Whoopi said, lifting a brow. "But lately some folks think you've been avoiding certain tough topics. Playing it safe. Smiling your way through controversy instead of addressing anything real." A sharp inhale rippled through the audience. Joy Behar shifted in her seat. Sonny Hostin leaned forward, sensing tension rising like steam from a boiling pot. Chris's expression flickered, just a shadow of unease, but he stayed composed. "I'm not sure what you mean," he said carefully. "I don't think I've avoided anything." Whoopi chuckled under her breath, the sound low and edged. "Come on, Chris. People don't see you as the type to speak up unless it's convenient. Some even say you're the king of playing neutral." The studio went dead silent. Even the camera operator at stage right froze. Chris's jaw tightened for the first time, a subtle motion but unmistakable. "Is that what you think?" he asked, meeting her gaze directly. Whoopi didn't flinch. "I think," she said, "that sometimes actors hide behind their nice guy image. And I think people are tired of it." The audience let out a collective gasp. On the monitor backstage, a producer's hand flew to their mouth. This wasn't the light, warm conversation they'd scripted. This was a collision course, and everyone could feel the impact coming. Chris sat back, his chest rising with a slow, controlled breath. He wasn't angry yet, not visibly, but something in him had changed. It was in the way he leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice dropping just slightly. "I'm all for having real conversations," he began. "But if we're going to do that, we should be fair. I think most people know who I am by the way I carry myself. I don't pretend to be perfect. I don't claim to be anything I'm not." "But that's exactly it," Whoopi countered. "People want to know who you really are, not the PR-friendly version." The exchange was no longer interviewer and guest. It was a duel. Sonny tried to diffuse it. "Maybe what Whoopi's saying is..." But Whoopi lifted a hand, cutting her off. "No, let me finish," she insisted, eyes still locked on Chris. "You've been in this business long enough to know your image isn't just something that happens. You curate it. And honestly, some viewers feel like you're hiding." Chris's nostrils flared for half a second. His fingers curled under the table, gripping the edge so tightly the muscles in his forearm tightened. "You're suggesting I'm dishonest," he said quietly, each word deliberate. "I'm saying people think you dodge," Whoopi replied, shrugging. "And maybe you do." That did it. The audience felt the shift like a cold rush of air. Even the hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Joy covered her mouth. Ana Navarro blinked slowly, mouthing wow. Chris leaned forward, no longer smiling, no longer playing along. "You know," he said, voice steady, "I came here because I respect this show. I respect you, Whoopi. Always have. But if you're going to imply that I'm some kind of fraud just because I'm not loud or angry or dramatic, Then let's talk about it. The words dropped like stones into the silence. He continued, not raising his voice, but sharpening it. Being calm doesn't mean being fake. Being thoughtful doesn't mean being evasive. I choose to handle myself in a way that doesn't add more noise to the world. That's not hiding. That's intentional. The audience broke into spontaneous applause, more out of shock than support. Whoopi didn't clap. She didn't blink. She just stared at him, as though deciding her next move. "Oh, so you're intentional," she said, leaning back with a smirk. "Is that what you call it? Because to some people it looks like you only speak up when it makes you look good." Chris sat back. The words hit him, hard enough that something in his demeanor cracked, not anger, but disappointment. Deep, visible disappointment. "That's unfair," he said, his voice lower than before. "And you know it." For a moment, Whoopi didn't answer. The tension stretched thin, almost unbearable. Then she said, "Maybe. But it's what people are talking about." "No," Chris replied, shaking his head slowly. "It's what you're talking about." The audience gasped again, this time louder. Phones lifted. Whispering spread across the studio like wildfire. Joy muttered under her breath, "Oh boy," while Anna subtly motioned to a producer offstage, signaling that things were escalating too quickly. But Chris wasn't finished. "I didn't come here to be accused of being inauthentic," he said. "And I didn't come here to play some character you've decided I am. I'm here because I believe conversations matter. But what you're doing isn't a conversation. It's an attack." The studio froze. Even Whoopi's expression faltered for the briefest second. And then, right there, live, with millions watching, she said the line that would ignite everything to come. "Maybe you're just not used to someone challenging the real you." Chris's eyes locked onto hers, something burning behind them, not rage, but resolve. The kind of resolve that comes from being underestimated, misread, pushed too far. His voice came out low and controlled, the kind of calm right before a storm. "Oh, trust me," he said. "I know exactly who I am. The question is, do you?" The audience erupted, half in cheers, half in disbelief. And that was the moment the calmest man in Hollywood began to fire back. The energy in the studio shifted so sharply it felt like gravity itself changed. The applause faded into an uneasy silence, the kind that made people instinctively lean forward in their seats without realizing it. Chris Evans didn't look away from Whoopi, not even for a second. His jaw was set, his posture straighter than before, the polite charm gone. In its place stood a man who had spent years avoiding confrontation, finally deciding not to run from one. Whoopi held his stare, trying to maintain her usual air of cool authority, but something about his calmness, his refusal to fold, made her grip the edge of her chair a little tighter. There was something deeply unsettling about a man who didn't need to raise his voice to make the room feel like it was closing in. Joy Behar cleared her throat softly, the kind of nervous sound that slips out when someone feels a storm coming. Sunny Hostin glanced between them like a referee who never signed up for a heavyweight match but suddenly found herself ringside. "So Chris," Sunny said quietly, attempting once again to smooth over the tension, "maybe what Whoopi is trying to say." Whoopi cut in again before Sunny could finish, but this time, Chris didn't let her. "I can speak for myself," he said firmly, the control in his voice almost startling. "And I heard what she said the first time." The audience murmured again. Even through the bright hot studio lights, Chris's expression showed something raw, something cracked open by disappointment and disbelief rather than anger. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. "So you think I'm being unfair?" "I think you're making assumptions," he replied, "about a person you don't actually know." Whoopi opened her mouth to respond, but Chris leaned slightly forward, and his next words silenced her. "You're treating me like a caricature of myself. Like I'm some guy walking around with a shield and a slogan." The audience reacted with soft laughter at the Captain America reference, but Chris didn't even blink. He wasn't here for jokes anymore. "For years," he continued, "I've tried to stay thoughtful with what I say because people twist things. They spin it. They weaponize it. And guess what? It's exhausting. Not because I'm hiding, but because I'm careful. There's a difference." Whoopi nodded slowly, almost as if she was waiting for him to contradict himself. "But careful can also mean controlled, Chris. It can mean calculated." "And so what if it does?" he shot back gently. "You think everyone needs to walk around emotional and loud to be honest. Some of us don't process the world that way. Some of us choose peace over chaos." The camera zoomed in on Whoopi's face. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. So you're saying people like me choose chaos? She asked, folding her arms. Chris exhaled softly through his nose. I'm saying you choose confrontation. This time, the audience didn't gasp, they howled. Cheers thundered through the studio, drowning out everything else. The stage crew exchanged frantic looks, unsure if they should cut to commercial, but no producer dared to interrupt something this explosive. Whoopi raised her voice just slightly. Hey, I'm doing my job. And so am I, Chris answered. I'm here promoting a movie. I'm here sharing my time. I didn't come here expecting to get interrogated about my character. Ana Navarro, trying desperately to ease the moment, interjected with a soft laugh. Okay, everybody breathe, please. This is getting spicy. But Chris wasn't done. Not even close. You know what's funny? He continued, shifting in his chair. People assume that if someone doesn't react the way they want, that person must not care. That they are dodging. That they are hiding. But sometimes holding back is harder than lashing out. A strange light flashed in Whoopi's eyes, something like provocation. Then say what you want to say, she challenged. Stop holding it back. Another ripple went through the audience. Everyone knew what she was doing. She was pushing him to break, to raise his voice, to lose control so she could point and say, see? This is the real Chris. But he didn't break. Instead, he straightened his back and stared at her with a calm that felt like a blade. You want the real me? Chris said, voice dropping into something colder. The real me is tired. Tired of being told I'm fake because I don't scream. Tired of being criticized for not giving sound bites. Tired of people expecting me to snap just to prove I have feelings. Whoopi leaned forward. So this is you snapping? No, he replied softly. This is me defending myself. The crowd erupted yet again. Joy shook her head, whispering something to Sunny, who looked genuinely alarmed. And then Whoopi fired the next shot. You know, Chris, maybe you're just not used to strong women challenging you. It was a dagger hidden in a sentence, a claim framed as a casual comment, thrown with full force. The audience reacted instantly. A few oohs. A few shocked laughs. Some uncomfortable shifting. Chris blinked, his expression changing, eyes widening just slightly, then narrowing. Not in anger. Not in defensiveness. But in disbelief. That's not fair, he said. And honestly, it's insulting, to both of us. Is it? Whoopi replied, shrugging. Yay, it is. Chris's voice was unwavering. Because I've worked with strong women my whole career. I've been raised by them. I've learned from them. I've respected them. Don't twist this into something it's not. Sunny gently placed a hand on the table, trying to intervene. Okay. But Chris wasn't finished. He turned back to Whoopi. You want honesty? Fine. I think you came into this with a narrative. You wanted confrontation. You wanted heat. And if you didn't get it, you were going to poke until you did. The crowd erupted again. Some clapped. Some gasped. Some sat completely still, not wanting to breathe wrong in the middle of this unfolding fire. Whoopi's jaw tightened. So now you're telling me my intentions. Chris leaned in. No, I'm telling you how it feels. A soft gasp washed across the seats. Something about that line hit harder than anything else. It wasn't an attack. It was a revelation, raw, vulnerable, and undeniably real. Whoopi swallowed, visibly taken aback for the first time. The corner of her mouth twitched as though she wanted to respond but couldn't find the right words quickly enough. For a brief second, the studio went quiet. Too quiet. The silence felt like a held breath between thunder and lightning. Then Whoopi forced a laugh. Okay, so you feel attacked. I get it. But I'm asking questions people want answers to. Chris shook his head slowly. No. You're asking questions you want answers to, framed as if the world demands them. A quiet damn escaped from someone in the audience. Anna tried one more time to create a bridge. Look, Chris, we love you here. Nobody's trying to tear you down. But Chris didn't take his eyes off Whoopi. I don't mind tough questions. I don't mind honesty. But what I won't tolerate is someone acting like they know me better than I know myself. The audience applauded thunderously, so loud the stage floor vibrated. Whoopi lifted her chin. So what do you want from this conversation, Chris? He took a breath, steady and slow. I want fairness, he said. And respect. The moment held there, electric, fragile, shimmering with unresolved tension, as if the entire studio were balancing on a wire stretched impossibly thin between two cliffs. And then Whoopi leaned back, expression unreadable. Well, she said softly. Then maybe you should show us who you really are. Chris's eyes flickered with something fierce, an ignition. Maybe I already am, he replied. The audience exploded once more. The air inside the studio grew heavy, so heavy it felt like every breath was being filtered through tension. People weren't just watching a celebrity interview anymore. They were watching a dam break, slowly and spectacularly, right before their eyes. Chris Evans sat forward, shoulders squared, eyes unwavering. Whoopi Goldberg leaned back, her posture rigid but her gaze sharp, refusing to retreat, refusing to yield. And the other hosts? They seemed frozen in place, each afraid to move, afraid to insert themselves into a confrontation that now lived entirely in its own universe. The audience, usually quick to laugh or clap or react, had fallen into a stunned silence. Some leaned so far forward their elbows rested on their knees. A few held their phones up discreetly, knowing they were capturing a moment that would go viral within minutes. The tension wasn't just theatrical anymore. It felt personal, raw, intimate, unpredictable. Chris inhaled quietly, smoothing the front of his shirt as though grounding himself. Then he spoke. "You want me to show who I really am?" he asked softly. "Fine. I'll tell you exactly who I am." Whoopi didn't look away, but a flicker of something, uncertainty, maybe, crossed her eyes. "I work hard," Chris continued. "I care about the world. I care about people. I care about the impact of what I put out there. But I don't believe volume equals virtue. I don't think shouting makes you brave. And I don't think showing restraint makes you weak." He paused, letting the silence carry the truth of his words. "But the world doesn't always accept that," he added. "It wants sound bites, outrage, drama. It wants heroes and villains. And when you don't fit neatly into either category, it labels you. Coward, fake, calculated." The audience murmured, quiet and reflective. Chris turned slightly, addressing not just Whoopi but the entire room. "Look, I understand the responsibility of having a platform. I know what people expect of me. But being a public figure doesn't mean I stop being human. And being human means sometimes I choose peace over noise. That's not manipulation. That's honesty." Joy Behar shifted in her seat, nodding sympathetically. "I get that, Chris," she said. "Not everyone needs to yell to be understood." But Whoopi wasn't done. She leaned forward again, her voice low but edged with steel. "Then why does it seem like you only speak up when it keeps you in people's good graces?" Chris's expression froze, as though he'd just been struck by a low blow he didn't see coming. He blinked once, twice, processing the sting behind her words. "That's a serious accusation," he said after a moment. "And I don't appreciate it. Is it untrue?" Whoopi countered. The audience inhaled sharply. Chris let out a breath, the kind that sounded like it had been held for far too long. "I speak up when I know what I'm talking about. When I feel confident I'm not making things worse. I don't jump into every argument because I'm not here to pour gasoline on fires. I know what influence can do." His voice grew stronger, more resonant. People forget that sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's responsibility. Sunny Hostin nodded slowly. "That's a fair point. Not everyone processes issues publicly. Some people need to think before they speak." Whoopi tapped her fingers on the table, her gaze unblinking. "But people want transparency, authenticity. They want to know you're not just playing nice to keep your career safe." Chris straightened suddenly, sitting with a new kind of conviction. "My career will be fine if I live with integrity. What won't be fine is my conscience if I say things I don't mean just to appease critics." A fresh wave of applause filled the studio, louder this time, as though people were finding courage in his conviction. But Whoopi persisted. "Okay, so this right now, this moment, are we seeing the real you? The real Chris Evans?" He looked at her for a long moment, eyes steady, voice quiet but cutting through the room like a laser. "Yes," he said. "Because the real me won't let someone rewrite my intentions just to fit a narrative." Whoopi's jaw tightened again. "I'm not rewriting anything. I'm asking questions that matter. And I'm answering them," he replied, leaning forward. "But you're not listening. You're waiting. Waiting for me to slip, to get angry, to give you that explosive moment you can package into a headline." A few audience members clapped, while others gasped at his bluntness. Ana Navarro frowned. "Chris," she said softly, but he didn't break focus. "You think not shouting is hiding," he said to Whoopi. "You think choosing calm is choosing cowardice. But do you know how many times I've held back something I wanted to say because I didn't want to hurt people? Because I didn't want to add more negativity to the world. He shook his head slowly. There's strength in restraint. You taught me that when I watched you growing up. You taught the world that. That line, it landed differently. For the first time, Whoopi's expression softened just barely, just enough that the cameras zoomed in, trying to catch every micro-expression of the unraveling dynamic. Chris continued, voice lower, more vulnerable. I respect you, Whoopi. I always have. But today, it feels like you came into this wanting me to slip. Wanting me to reveal something ugly so you could say, aha, see? Not so perfect. But I'm not pretending to be perfect. I never have. Whoopi swallowed but said nothing. And if you don't see authenticity in someone trying to be careful with their words, Chris added, maybe the problem isn't that they are fake. Maybe the problem is that you're expecting them to perform pain they don't have. The entire audience erupted, cheers, applause, a few whistles. The tension broke open, flooding the room with noise. But Chris didn't react to it. He kept his eyes on Whoopi, grounding himself, steady. Whoopi inhaled slowly, visibly trying to hold onto her composure. So you think I want you to fail? I think you want a moment, Chris said. You want headlines. You want drama. And that's fine. Your show thrives on it. But don't confuse provoking someone with revealing their truth. There it was. A line so precise, so sharp, so devastating that it seemed to cut the air itself. Whoopi's lips parted slightly, as though she wanted to respond but couldn't find the right words. The silence that followed was thicker than any before. Even the crew backstage was frozen, unsure if this was genius television or an impending disaster. Sonny leaned forward, voice soft. Chris, what do you want moving forward from this conversation? He turned toward her, exhaling gently. I want understanding, he said. Not agreement. Not praise. Just understanding. And a little grace. Anna nodded, visibly relieved at the shift in energy. Grace is something we all need more of these days. Chris nodded back. Exactly. Then, slowly, deliberately, he looked at Whoopi again, the room holding its breath with him. And I want you, he said, to see the person sitting in front of you, not the image you've built in your head. That landed like an emotional earthquake, quiet, powerful, devastating. Whoopi stared at him, her eyes flickering with something tangled, pride, frustration, respect, even sadness. The soundboard picked up the soft thud of someone's heartbeat. It might have been the microphone. It might have been everyone's imagination. It didn't matter. It felt real. And then, finally, Whoopi spoke. I didn't expect this from you, she said, voice softer than it had been all episode. Maybe that's the point, Chris replied gently. The room exploded with applause again, not chaotic this time, but emotional, cathartic. Something transformational had happened. Something irreversible. And yet, everyone could sense this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because the moment the applause faded, Whoopi leaned forward, her face unreadable, and asked, So, what are you holding back? The room froze. Chris leaned in too, eyes narrowing slightly. Do you really want to know? He asked quietly. And the studio held its breath. The question hung in the air like a blade suspended by a thread. What was Chris Evans holding back? The audience sat frozen. No coughing, no shifting, no whispering. Even the producers backstage stood motionless, unsure whether to cut to commercial or brace for impact. The moment stretched, long and trembling, as Chris leaned back in his chair and regarded Whoopi with an expression that held equal parts disappointment, resolve, and something almost shocking, hurt. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he let the silence settle, let the weight of her question circle the room like a storm cloud searching for lightning. Whoopi, for once, seemed uncertain. Her fingers drummed lightly on the table before she clasped her hands together, trying to steady herself. Finally, Chris spoke. What I'm holding back, he said quietly, is how disappointed I am right now. A murmur rippled through the audience, soft, startled, heavy with recognition that something deep had cracked open. Whoopi blinked, startled by the vulnerability in his voice. Chris continued, I'm disappointed because I came here expecting a conversation. A real one. I didn't expect easy questions. I didn't expect flattery. But I did expect fairness. Respect. He paused, swallowing. And I don't feel like I got that today. Whoopi shifted, visibly taken aback. Chris, But he wasn't done. You asked what I was holding back, he said, maintaining eye contact. And the truth is, I've been holding back how exhausting it is to constantly prove that I'm a good person. Because no matter what I do, someone always decides it's not enough. Not loud enough. Not dramatic enough. Not angry enough. The room felt like it was tilting, like gravity was pulling the entire studio toward the table where the two of them sat locked in an emotional standoff. Chris leaned in. You say people want authenticity, but what they really want is spectacle. A meltdown. A breakdown. Something messy. Something ugly. And when you don't give them that, they say you're hiding. Whoopi's eyebrows drew together, not defensive this time, reflective. Troubled. I'm not hiding, Chris said more firmly. I'm choosing. And today, I'm choosing to tell you that your line of questioning, it hurt. Not because I can't handle it, but because it came from someone I grew up admiring. Joy Behar looked down, her expression soft with sympathy. Sunny Hostin reached across the table and gently touched Chris's wrist, an unspoken thank you for his honesty. Anna Navarro wiped the corner of her eye, visibly moved. Whoopi, however, was still frozen. Her voice came out quiet. Chris, that wasn't my intention. Chris nodded slowly. I know, but intentions don't erase impact. That line hit her harder than any previous exchange. Her eyes widened briefly, just a flicker, but enough that the cameras caught it. The audience began to clap slowly, not the explosive, chaotic applause from before, but a rising wave of emotion, the kind that fills a room with warmth and gravity. Chris didn't acknowledge it. He kept his gaze on Whoopi, waiting. Whoopi took a breath, one that shook almost imperceptibly. I didn't mean to come at you, she said. I was pushing. That's what I do. But I didn't expect you to take it this way. Chris softened, but only slightly. That's the problem. You expected me to fit into a role. Either be the perfect guy who shrugs it off, or snap so you can say, there he is. That's the real him. But I'm neither of those things. I'm just a human being trying to navigate this without harming anyone or myself. A hum of emotion rippled across the seats. Someone sniffled. Someone else whispered, wow. Whoopi exhaled. Maybe I pushed too hard. Chris nodded, slow, deliberate. Maybe. She looked down at the desk, her shoulders loosening just a fraction. When she looked back up at him, something in her had changed. A bit of pride had melted. A bit of defensiveness had dissolved. You know, she said softly, it takes guts to say what you just said. Not anger. Not showmanship. But honesty. Chris didn't smile. He just nodded. I respect that, Whoopi added. The audience burst into applause again, this time warm, relieved, grateful. But the moment wasn't finished. Whoopi wasn't done. And neither was Chris. She leaned forward. So, let me ask you this, sincerely, not for a headline. What do you want people to understand about you? Chris took his time answering. That I mess up. That I'm flawed. That I don't have the answers to everything. That sometimes I stay quiet because I don't want to add more noise to the world. And that none of that means I'm fake. He paused, then added with gentle conviction. And that being calm doesn't mean being weak. Applause thundered through the room. Joy Behar stood up briefly before sitting back down. Sunny covered her mouth, eyes shining. Anna patted Chris on the shoulder. Whoopi absorbed his words, then nodded once, the kind of nod that said I hear you. I really hear you. You showed a lot today, she said. More than I expected. Chris offered a small smile, not triumphant, not smug, but warm. Maybe that's the point. The audience cheered again. Phones lifted. A few people stood. The energy shifted from tension to release, like the whole room had exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes. But then came the final twist. A producer rushed to the edge of the stage, waving frantically. Sunny noticed first. We're out of time, she said reluctantly. We have to wrap, but, my God. Whoopi looked at Chris one last time. Thank you for this conversation, she said sincerely. Thank you for hearing me, Chris replied. The cameras zoomed out. The lights dimmed slightly. And for a moment, just a small, fleeting moment, it looked like everything had resolved. But backstage, phones were already lighting up. Clips spreading. Hashtags forming. #Chris vs Whoopi. #The View Showdown. #Evans speaks out. Within minutes, Twitter turned into a battlefield. Half of users praised Chris for his composure and honesty. Others accused Whoopi of being too aggressive. Some editors clipped the most explosive lines and looped them endlessly. Entertainment headlines popped up like sparks. Chris Evans breaks his silence live on The View. Whoopi pushed too far. Fans react to tense interview. The moment that left the view speechless. Even celebrities weighed in on Instagram stories. Actors, athletes, comedians, everyone sharing clips, everyone choosing sides. And Chris, he didn't post anything. He didn't comment. He didn't double down. He simply left the studio through the side exit, shoulders slightly hunched, hands tucked in his pockets, exhaling deeply as the cool air hit his face. Not victorious, not defeated, just human, worn out, reflective, and strangely lighter. Meanwhile, Whoopi stayed backstage, sitting quietly for a long moment, not speaking to anyone. Not out of anger, but contemplation. A producer whispered, "Are you okay?" Whoopi nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said softly. "Just thinking." The confrontation didn't end with shouting. It didn't end with humiliation. It ended with two people realizing that the truth is rarely loud, rarely sensational, rarely explosive. Sometimes the truth is calm. Sometimes the truth is quiet. Sometimes the truth is the moment you realize someone is more complex than the narrative you came ready to force on them. And that's what made this moment legendary. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Was Chris right to push back? Was Whoopi justified in challenging him? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop your opinion in the comments below, and don't hold back. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to Talk Narrative for more intense, dramatic, cinematic breakdowns of the biggest celebrity clashes on television. Hit that like button, share this story, and stay tuned, because the next showdown is already on its way.